Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I walked through my front door after another 12-hour day, pouring concrete foundations, expecting to hear my children's laughter echoing through our small ranch house. Instead, silence greeted me, like a funeral parlor. I climbed the stairs and found my 8-year-old daughter, Emma, and 6-year-old son, Jake, huddled together on Emma's bed, tears streaming down their faces. "Daddy," Emma whispered through hiccups, "Aunt Gloria told us you never amounted to anything and we shouldn't grow up to be like you because you embarrassed the whole Henderson family." My heart shattered as Jake looked up with those innocent blue eyes, asking if I was really a failure. I pulled both children into my arms, feeling their small bodies shake against my chest as they sobbed. The words Gloria had spoken to them cut deeper than any physical wound could have. Emma's voice broke as she continued. "She said you threw your life away, and that Uncle Harold was a real success because he wore suits and had an office downtown." After what felt like hours of reassuring them, explaining that sometimes adults say hurtful things when they're unhappy with their own lives, I finally got them settled into bed with extra stories and promises that everything would be all right. But as I sat alone in my home office afterwards, staring at the shadows cast by my desk lamp, I knew something fundamental had changed. Gloria Henderson, my late father's sister, had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. For 15 years, ever since I dropped out of college to work construction after Dad's sudden heart attack, Gloria had made it her mission to remind everyone at family gatherings that I had wasted my potential. She constantly compared me unfavorably to her late husband Harold, painting him as the embodiment of success, while portraying me as Basham as the family's cautionary tale. What Gloria didn't know would know what no one in my family knew was that 3 years ago, I had saved her from complete financial ruin. When Harold died unexpectedly from cancer, leaving behind mountains of secret debt, Gloria faced immediate foreclosure on her beloved Victorian house at 6511 Maple Street. She had called my mother in tears, too proud to ask me directly for help, but desperate enough to hint that she needed intervention. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder that contained documents telling a very different story than the one Gloria believed about my life. Property deeds, mortgage papers, rental agreements, business licenses, and bank statements spread across my desk like pieces of a puzzle that revealed the true picture of Billy Henderson's success. Through my LLC Henderson Property Investments, I had purchased Gloria's house for $215,000, saving it from bank seizure. I became her landlord through Riverside Property Management Company, charging her $800 per month when comparable properties in that neighborhood rented for $1,500. I did it out of family compassion, even though she had spent years telling relatives I was irresponsible and would never amount to anything. Henderson and Sons Construction, which I had built from absolutely nothing, now employed 12 people across 2 full crews. Starting as an 18-year-old day laborer, I earned my contractor's license through night school while working 60-hour weeks. My company specialized in commercial foundations and residential construction, generating annual revenues that exceeded what Harold had ever made during his best years selling insurance. I owned 4 rental properties throughout Monroe County, had secured contracts for the next 18 months, and maintained business relationships with every major developer in the region. My modest lifestyle, driving a 15-year-old Ford pickup and wearing the same work clothes whether I was laying concrete or meeting with architects, was a deliberate choice. Success to me meant building something solid that would last, not impressing people with flashy displays of wealth. But Gloria had just attacked my children, making them question their father's worth while sitting in the living room of the house I owned. The irony was devastating, but the damage to Emma and Jake was unforgivable. I picked up my phone and dialed Tom Morrison, my property manager at Riverside Property Management. The call went straight to voicemail, so I left a message that would change everything. Tom, this is Billy Henderson. First thing Monday morning, I need you to prepare a non-renewal notice for the tenant at 6511 Maple Street, Gloria Henderson. 60 days notice as required by state law, no exceptions. Saturday afternoon brought the annual Henderson Family Barbecue, a tradition that rotated between different relatives' homes throughout the summer. This year's gathering was being hosted at Gloria's house on Maple Street, and the bitter irony wasn't lost on me as I parked my weathered pickup truck in the driveway of my own property. Sarah squeezed my hand as we walked up the front steps with Emma and Jake. "Remember why we're here?" she whispered. "For the kids to see their extended family, not for Gloria's drama." The house buzzed with familiar energy as 3 generations of Hendersons filled every room. Uncle Robert was manning the grill on the back deck, while Cousin Jennifer helped arrange covered dishes on the kitchen counter. My elderly mother sat in the living room with my grandmother, both women enjoying the rare opportunity to watch all their family gathered under one roof. The smell of barbecue sauce mixed with the aroma of my Aunt Margaret's famous cornbread, creating the kind of comfort that only family gatherings can provide. For exactly 10 minutes, everything felt wonderfully normal. Then Gloria appeared beside me near the refreshment table, her silver hair styled to perfection, and her blue floral dress pressed without a single wrinkle. She positioned herself strategically where her voice would carry across the main living area, ensuring maximum audience for whatever performance she had planned. "Billy, I believe it's time someone had an honest conversation with you about setting appropriate examples for the children," she announced loudly enough to stop conversations throughout the room. "Some people never seem to learn the importance of taking real responsibility for their life choices." Uncle Robert looked up from his conversation with my cousin Mark, setting down his beer bottle with a puzzled expression. Aunt Margaret paused in the middle of cutting her cornbread knife suspended in midair. Even the children playing in the corner turned to listen, sensing the tension that had suddenly filled the room. Gloria pulled out her smartphone and began displaying photos to anyone within viewing distance. This was Harold's corner office downtown on State Street. Notice the mahogany desk and the view overlooking the courthouse square. And here's his regional sales award from 1998 when he outsold every other agent in the district. She swiped to another photo holding the phone high enough for multiple people to see. This beautiful place was our vacation home up at Lake George before Harold passed. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a private dock where we spent every summer for 12 years. I watched Emma's face begin to crumple as relatives nodded along with Gloria's presentation. Jake moved closer to my leg, wrapping his small arms around my knee like he was seeking protection from something he didn't understand. Now I've been taking time to teach Billy's children about real values and proper expectations for their futures. Gloria continued her voice, growing more theatrical with each sentence. They need role models who can show them what actual success looks like in American society. Harold built something meaningful with his career. He provided genuine security stability and earned the respect of his colleagues and community. She displayed another photo showing Harold in a business suit shaking hands with other men in what appeared to be some kind of awards ceremony. These are Harold's business associates from the annual insurance conference in Albany. Notice how they carry themselves, how they dress, how they conduct themselves professionally. That's what real achievement looks like. My mother tried to intervene, her voice gentle but firm. "Gloria, I think you might be being a little harsh here." "Harsh?" Gloria's eyebrows shot up in theatrical surprise. "Margaret, your son is 32 years old, and he's still working in construction, getting his clothes dirty every day for wages that barely cover basic expenses. Someone in this family needs to be realistic about his situation before it affects the children's understanding of what they should aspire to achieve." The phrase "getting his clothes dirty" echoed through the suddenly quiet room like a slap across the face. I felt Sarah's hand tighten on my arm, her fingers pressing against my bicep in the warning signal we had developed over years of marriage to help me control my temper in difficult situations. But Gloria wasn't finished with her presentation. She walked to the center of the living room, positioning herself like a teacher, addressing a classroom full of students who needed important guidance. I've been giving this considerable thought over the past few weeks, and I believe it's time for responsible family members to start a college fund for Emma and Jake. Obviously, their father won't be able to provide adequate resources for their higher education on a construction worker's income. I'm prepared to make the initial contribution to get this fund established properly. She delivered this announcement like she was unveiling a charitable foundation to help underprivileged children. The implication couldn't have been clearer. Billy Henderson was incapable of providing for his own children's future, and more successful family members needed to step in to compensate for his failures. I excused myself to use the bathroom, where I stood gripping the marble countertop and staring at my reflection in the mirror above Gloria's sink. My calloused hands, evidence of 15 years building foundations and framing houses, trembled slightly as I fought to control the rage building in my chest. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Tom Morrison's number. "Tom, this is Billy Henderson. I need you to have those non-renewal papers ready for delivery first thing Wednesday morning. Gloria Henderson at 6511 Maple Street. 60 days notice exactly as required by state law." "Any specific reason you want cited for the non-renewal?" Tom asked professionally. I looked at myself in the mirror again, seeing my father's determined jawline reflected back at me. "No reason required. Property owner has decided to reclaim the premises for personal use." "Understood completely. I'll have everything prepared and delivered Wednesday by 9 in the morning." I hung up and rejoined the party, where Gloria was now showing Emma and Jake more photos of Harold's office, explaining in detail how real success could be measured by the size of someone's desk and the prestige of their business address. Sleep abandoned me completely that night. I lay in bed listening to Sarah's steady breathing while my mind churned with questions that had been nagging at me for years. Something about Gloria's stories had always felt rehearsed and artificial, like she was reciting memorized lines from a play, rather than sharing genuine memories. By 6 in the morning, I gave up on rest and made coffee in our small kitchen. The house felt peaceful in those early hours, with Emma and Jake still sleeping and the morning light just beginning to filter through our curtains. But my mind was already working, forming a plan to uncover the truth about Harold's supposed business success. At 7 sharp, I called Marcus Williams, my accountant and longtime friend, who maintained extensive connections throughout the local business community. Marcus had helped me navigate the financial complexities of building my construction company, and his network included bankers, insurance agents, real estate professionals, and business owners throughout Monroe County. "Marcus, I need you to help me research someone. Harold Henderson supposedly ran a successful insurance business until his death 3 years ago. My aunt talks about him like he was some kind of regional business leader." "Harold Henderson," Marcus repeated thoughtfully. "Give me until this afternoon. I'll make some calls and see what I can dig up through official channels." I spent the morning at a job site supervising my crew as they poured the foundation for a new medical office complex. The familiar rhythm of construction work usually helped clear my head, but today I found myself distracted, checking my phone every few minutes for Marcus's call. When my phone finally rang at 2:30 that afternoon, Marcus's voice carried a gravity that immediately put me on alert. "Billy, you need to find somewhere private to sit down for this conversation." I was standing next to my truck in the parking lot of the medical complex, so I climbed into the cab and closed the door. "What did you find?" "Harold Henderson's business went completely bankrupt 2 years before his death. He'd been living on credit cards and personal loans for the final 4 years of his life, accumulating massive debt while hiding his financial collapse from his wife. The vacation home Gloria shows pictures of, that was a timeshare they lost to foreclosure in 2019. Those business awards she's so proud of, I found documentation showing Harold lost over $20,000 in what was essentially a pyramid scheme disguised as a professional development program. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as the implications began sinking in. What about his downtown office? Shared workspace facility that he rented month to month. Never owned it, never employed anyone, never built any kind of substantial client base. Billy, this man, was drowning financially for years before cancer killed him. When he died, he left Gloria with nothing except debt and a house that was already deep into foreclosure proceedings. I sat in stunned silence, staring across the parking lot at my construction crew as they worked efficiently to complete the foundation pour. These were honest men doing honest work, building something real and permanent that would serve the community for decades. Marcus, there's something else I need to know. Have you heard anything about Gloria spreading rumors about me or my business? Actually, yes. I was hoping you'd ask about that because I've been concerned for months. She's been calling business owners around town, introducing herself as your concerned family member, and suggesting that people should be cautious about doing business with you. What kind of things has she been saying? That you're irresponsible with money, unreliable with project deadlines, and that family members have concerns about your decision-making abilities. Billy, she cost you the Morrison Creek Shopping Center project last year. The developer specifically called me asking about your financial stability because someone claiming to be family had warned them you might not be able to complete a major contract. The Morrison Creek project, $200,000 in potential revenue that would have secured my company's growth for the following year. The developer had suddenly backed out without clear explanation, citing vague concerns about contractor reliability. There's more, Marcus continued grimly. I called Linda. You know, my wife works at Emma and Jake's school as a volunteer coordinator. Your aunt has been showing up there regularly, telling teachers and staff that your children come from what she calls a disadvantaged home, where the father can't provide basic necessities. The blood seemed to drain from my face completely. What does that mean exactly? She convinced them to enroll Emma and Jake in the free lunch program. She signed them up for the charity backpack drive, where local businesses donate school supplies to low-income families. She's been positioning herself as the concerned family member trying to help children whose father can't adequately provide for them. I thought about Emma coming home from school lately, seeming quieter than usual, less eager to talk about her day. I thought about Jake mentioning that some of his classmates had been asking him questions about why he needed special help with lunch money. Marcus, I need you to get me documentation of everything you just told me. Phone records, business contacts, school communications, anything that shows what she's been doing. I'm already working on it. Billy, this woman, has been running a systematic campaign to destroy your reputation in the community while positioning herself as the responsible family member and you as the cautionary tale. After hanging up, I sat in my truck for another 30 minutes watching my crew complete their work with the kind of professional competence that had built my company's reputation over 15 years. We were good at what we did. We built things that lasted. We treated clients fairly and completed projects on time and within budget. But Gloria had been undermining all of that, using her position as family member to plant seeds of doubt about my character and reliability. She had been sabotaging my business relationships while accepting below-market rent on my own property. I pulled out my phone and called Tom Morrison. Tom, I want to move up the timeline for Gloria's eviction notice. Can you deliver it Wednesday as planned? Absolutely. Do you want me to include any specific language about reasons for non-renewal? I looked across the parking lot at the medical complex foundation my crew had just completed, knowing that in a few months, it would become a place where doctors helped heal people, and families received care they needed. Just the standard language. Property owner has decided not to renew the lease. Nothing more complicated than that. Monday morning found me sitting in the conference room at Riverside Property Management, surrounded by documents, recordings, and evidence that painted a disturbing picture of deliberate sabotage spanning multiple years. Tom Morrison sat across from me with my business attorney Lisa Chen, both of them wearing expressions that mixed professional concern with personal outrage. Legally, you have every right to terminate Mrs. Henderson's tenancy, Lisa explained, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses as she reviewed the rental agreement. However, given the scope of what we've discovered about her behavior, I strongly recommend we take a strategic approach that will maximize the impact when you reveal the full truth. Tom slid a thick folder across the polished conference table. These are documented instances where Gloria Henderson contacted your commercial clients over the past 18 months. She posed as a concerned family member and warned them about potential problems with Henderson and Sons construction. I opened the folder and felt my stomach clench. Phone records, email screenshots, recorded conversations, and written complaints. Not just the Morrison Creek project I knew about, but 5 other significant contracts that had mysteriously evaporated after initial positive meetings. This recording is from Brian Murphy at Murphy Development. Lisa continued pressing play on her laptop. Mrs. Henderson called him last spring when you were bidding on their retail complex project. Gloria's voice came through the speakers clearly. Mr. Murphy, this is Gloria Henderson calling about my nephew's construction company. I wanted to warn you that Billy has been having some personal problems that might affect his ability to complete large projects reliably. Family members have noticed changes in his decision-making, and we're concerned about his financial management. My hands clenched into fists as I listened to her systematic destruction of my professional reputation. She told him you had a gambling addiction and might not be able to finish projects if you hit a losing streak, Tom added quietly. A gambling addiction? I had never placed so much as a $5 lottery ticket purchase in my entire life. Lisa pulled out another set of documents. She's also been targeting your personal relationships within the extended family. We have evidence that she's contacted elderly relatives, warning them not to lend you money if you ever request it, claiming you're financially irresponsible. My phone buzzed with an urgent text from Sarah. Emergency at school with Emma. Call me immediately. I stepped into the hallway to call my wife, my hands shaking as I pressed her number. Billy, I'm sitting in the guidance counselor's office with Mrs. Patterson. Sarah's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. Emma has been meeting with her twice a week for the past month because her grades have been dropping, and she's been withdrawing from friends during lunch and recess. What does this have to do with Gloria? Everything. Mrs. Patterson just informed me that your aunt has been volunteering here regularly as part of their family outreach program. She told the school administration that Emma and Jake come from what she described as a disadvantaged household, where the father struggles to provide basic necessities. I leaned against the hallway wall, feeling dizzy as the implications hit me. Sarah, what exactly did she tell them? She convinced them to automatically enroll our children in the free breakfast and lunch program. She signed them up for the weekend backpack program, where volunteers send home food for kids who might not have adequate meals over the weekend. She told teachers that you were having financial difficulties and might need help affording school supplies and field trip fees. The image of my children sitting in the school cafeteria eating meals designated for families in poverty, while their classmates watched and whispered, made my vision blur with rage. There's more, Sarah continued. Jake's soccer coach called this morning. Someone claiming to be family contacted him saying you couldn't afford the tournament registration fees and asking whether the team had scholarship funds available for players from struggling families. When I returned to the conference room, Lisa and Tom were examining additional evidence that Marcus had delivered while I was on the phone. Your aunt has been more thorough than we initially realized, Lisa said grimly. She's contacted the bank, where you have your business accounts, expressing family concerns about your financial management. She called the state licensing board to inquire about filing a complaint regarding your professional conduct, though she never actually submitted anything formal. Tom pulled out a legal document that made my blood run cold. This is a copy of your grandmother's will revision from 6 months ago. The witness signature shows that Gloria Henderson was present when your grandmother removed you as a beneficiary. I stared at my grandmother's shaky handwriting, recognizing the document that had confused me when she mentioned changing her estate planning last Christmas. She had seemed embarrassed about the subject and changed the conversation quickly when I asked for details. She convinced an 87-year-old woman that her grandson was too financially irresponsible to handle an inheritance. I said quietly, more to myself than to the others. Billy Elisa said seriously, this goes far beyond simple family drama. Mrs. Henderson has been conducting a coordinated campaign to systematically destroy your business reputation, your family relationships, and your children's emotional well-being. The damage she's caused could easily be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue and emotional distress. I thought about Emma asking me last week if we were poor, because some of her friends had been whispering about her getting special help at school. I thought about Jake's confusion when his soccer coach had approached him with offers of financial assistance for equipment his family could easily afford. What are my options? Tom leaned forward. You could simply evict her and cut off contact, letting her figure out that you own the house when she receives the papers. Or you could orchestrate a more comprehensive revelation that exposes everything she's done and forces her to face the consequences publicly. I looked out the conference room window at the busy street below, watching normal people go about their normal lives while my family dealt with the aftermath of years of deliberate sabotage. I want to schedule a family meeting for this Sunday. Every Henderson family member who was at that barbecue needs to be there. And I want Gloria to receive her eviction notice Wednesday morning, giving her exactly 4 days to panic and make phone calls before she has to face everyone at once. Lisa and Tom exchanged meaningful glances. You're sure you want to go nuclear with this? Tom asked. I thought about my children crying in their bedroom, asking if their daddy was really a failure while sitting in the house their daddy owned. She went nuclear first. I'm just returning fire. Wednesday morning arrived clear and cold with frost covering the grass and autumn leaves crunching underfoot. Tom Morrison pulled up to 6511 Maple Street at exactly 9 o'clock, carrying an official envelope that contained legal documents powerful enough to shatter Gloria's carefully constructed world. I positioned myself 2 blocks away in my pickup truck, close enough to observe but far enough to avoid immediate confrontation. Through my rearview mirror, I watched Tom ring the doorbell and wait patiently as footsteps approached from inside the house. Gloria answered the door wearing her pink terry cloth bathrobe and matching slippers, her silver hair still wrapped in foam curlers from the night before. Even from my distant vantage point, I could see her confusion transform into shock as Tom handed her the certified letter and explained its contents. My phone started ringing within 5 minutes. Tom answered professionally. Riverside Property Management, this is Tom Morrison. This is Gloria Henderson at 6511 Maple Street, and there's been some kind of terrible mistake with this eviction notice. It lists the property owner as William Henderson, but that's completely impossible. There's no mistake, Mrs. Henderson. Mr. William Henderson purchased the property 3 years ago through Henderson Property Investments, LLC, and has decided not to renew your lease agreement. You have 60 days to vacate as required by New York state law. But William Henderson is my nephew Billy, and he's just a construction worker who never finished college. He couldn't possibly own property, especially not this house. Someone has obviously committed fraud or identity theft. Tom's voice remained calm and professional. I can assure you that all documentation is completely legitimate and properly filed with the Monroe County Clerk's office. If you have questions about the ownership details, you're welcome to research the public records yourself. The phone line went quiet for several long seconds before Gloria's voice returned higher-pitched and increasingly frantic. This is absolutely ridiculous. Billy Henderson is a failure who never amounted to anything meaningful in his entire life. He couldn't afford to buy a bicycle, let alone purchase a house. I'm calling the police immediately to report fraud and identity theft. After she hung up, Tom called me back with an update. She's not taking the news well. I expect you'll be hearing from her shortly. I didn't have to wait long. 25 minutes later, Gloria's blue sedan came screeching into the parking lot of my current job site, where my crew was pouring the foundation for a new dental office complex. She parked haphazardly across 2 spaces and stormed across the construction area in her high heels and Wednesday morning outfit completely inappropriate for an active work zone. "Billy Henderson, you stop this ridiculous charade immediately," she screamed, waving the eviction notice above her head like evidence in a courtroom drama. My entire crew stopped working and gathered around curious about the unexpected commotion. Danny Rodriguez, my lead foreman, stepped closer with a concerned expression, ready to intervene if the situation escalated beyond verbal confrontation. "What charade would that be, Aunt Gloria?" I asked calmly, setting down my clipboard and walking over to meet her. "This fake eviction notice claiming you own my house. You can't possibly own anything, let alone property, worth over $200,000. This has to be fraud, and I'm going to have you arrested for forgery and identity theft." I pulled out my smartphone and opened the photo gallery, showing her images of the property deed, the original purchase documents, bank records, showing the wire transfer, and my LLC registration papers. My workers leaned in curiously, suddenly realizing their boss had been far more financially successful than his modest pickup truck and everyday work clothes had suggested. Gloria's face cycled through a fascinating series of emotions as she processed the undeniable evidence, confusion, melting into disbelief, transforming into recognition, and recognition exploding into pure rage. "This can't be real," she whispered, then shouted, "This can't be real. You're nobody. You're a complete failure who dropped out of school." "Actually, Mrs. Henderson," Danny interrupted respectfully, "Billy owns several properties around the county. He's been way too modest about his business success. Henderson and Sons is one of the most respected construction companies in the region." Gloria spun around to stare at Danny, then back at me, then at the phone screen displaying legal documents that couldn't be argued with or explained away. "But how is this possible?" she stammered. "You work with your hands. You get dirty. You drive that ancient pickup truck." "Success isn't always what it looks like on the surface, Gloria. Some people build wealth quietly instead of advertising it." She grabbed my phone from my hands, studying the documents more closely, zooming in on signatures and official seals, as if she could find evidence of forgery that would restore her understanding of the world. When the reality finally penetrated completely, desperation replaced denial. "If this is really true, then everyone in the neighborhood needs to know what kind of person you really are. Billy Henderson," she announced dramatically. "If you actually own my house, then all my neighbors should understand exactly what you're doing to me." She marched away from the construction site and drove straight back to Maple Street, where she began going door to door throughout the neighborhood like a political candidate seeking emergency support. I followed at a discreet distance, parking where I could observe the spectacle unfolding. "Please, I need your help," I heard her tell Janet Wilson, the retired bank manager, who lived in the house directly next to my property. "Billy Henderson is trying to steal my home through some kind of illegal scheme. He's forged documents, and I need witnesses to call the police before he destroys my life." But Janet Wilson hadn't spent 30 years analyzing financial documents and mortgage applications for nothing. She examined Gloria's copies of the property deed and purchase records with the methodical precision of someone who understood legal paperwork. "Mrs. Henderson, these documents appear completely legitimate and properly notarized. Mr. Henderson legally purchased this property 3 years ago, and according to these rental records, he's been charging you significantly below market rate." Gloria's voice rose toward hysteria. "But that's impossible. He's nobody. He's just a construction worker who never accomplished anything." That's when the neighborhood stories started emerging like water breaking through a dam. "Billy fixed my roof after that ice storm last winter," offered Mrs. Peterson from across the street. "Wouldn't take a penny for materials or labor. He plows all our driveways every time it snows," added Bob and Martha Johnson from the corner house. "Never asks for anything in return. He donated all the lumber and hardware for the community garden pavilion. Contributed Bob Martinez, pointing toward the small park where neighbors gathered vegetables they grew cooperatively. Gloria's face went pale as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. For 3 years, she had been complaining to these very neighbors about her failure nephew, who couldn't manage his own life responsibly. Now they were learning that this same nephew had been quietly helping the entire community while she criticized his character. "But I've been telling you all how irresponsible and unreliable he was," Gloria protested weakly. Janet Wilson's expression hardened noticeably. "Yes, you certainly did spend considerable time criticizing the man who was keeping you from becoming homeless. That seems rather ungrateful in retrospect." By evening, word had spread throughout the entire neighborhood that Gloria Henderson had been systematically bad-mouthing her own landlord and financial benefactor for years, while accepting his below-market generosity. The story became neighborhood gossip. Within hours, the proud woman who looked down on everyone had been surviving on charity from the very person she claimed was worthless. Gloria retreated into the house and spent the night making desperate phone calls to every Henderson family member she could reach, trying to control the narrative before Sunday's planned confrontation. Sunday afternoon brought heavy gray clouds and the smell of approaching rain to my mother's modest ranch house on Birch Street. Cars lined both sides of the narrow residential road as Henderson family members arrived for what Gloria had frantically described as an emergency intervention to stop Billy's cruel and vindictive revenge. I counted 7 vehicles as Sarah and I pulled up with Emma and Jake Uncle Robert's red pickup truck, cousin Jennifer's white SUV, Aunt Margaret's sedan, my grandmother's old Buick, driven by cousin Mark, and 3 other cars belonging to relatives and family friends whom Gloria had recruited to support her cause. "You ready for this?" Sarah asked, squeezing my hand as we walked toward the front door. "I've been ready for 3 years." The living room buzzed with uncomfortable tension as extended family members arranged themselves in a rough circle, like participants in a formal intervention. Gloria had positioned herself in my late father's old recliner, surrounded by tissues and wearing an expression of wounded dignity that she had clearly practiced for maximum emotional impact. Uncle Robert stood up as we entered his weathered face, showing genuine concern. "Billy, I'm glad you came. Gloria's been telling us about some kind of dispute over her housing situation. We thought maybe talking through this as a family might help everyone understand what's really happening." Cousin Jennifer nodded supportively from her position on the couch. "We don't want family members fighting, especially over something that might be a misunderstanding. Whatever's going on, we can work it out together." Gloria dabbed at her eyes with a crumpled tissue, speaking in a voice carefully modulated to convey brave suffering. "I just don't understand where all this sudden hostility is coming from. I've tried so hard to be supportive of Billy and help guide his children toward better examples of success and responsibility." My mother gestured for everyone to settle down and give me a chance to explain my perspective before making any judgments about the situation. I set my laptop bag on the coffee table and connected my computer to Mom's television, just as I had planned during my strategy sessions with Tom and Lisa. Before anyone says anything else, I want everyone to see some documents that will clarify exactly what's been happening. The first image that appeared on the television screen was a bank statement showing the purchase of 6511 Maple Street for $215,000, with my name clearly listed as the buyer, and the transaction dated 3 years earlier. Uncle Robert squinted at the screen in confusion. "Billy, what are we looking at here?" 3 years ago, when Gloria was facing foreclosure after Harold's death, I purchased her house through my investment company to prevent her from losing it. I've been her landlord for 3 years, charging $800 monthly rent for a property that commands $1,500 on the current market. The room fell completely silent except for the sound of rain beginning to patter against the windows. "That's my house," Gloria said weakly. "That's been my house for 18 years. "It's been my house for 3 years, Gloria. You're my tenant." I clicked to the next document, my business license for Henderson & Sons Construction, showing annual revenues that made several family members gasp audibly. Cousin Jennifer's mouth dropped open. Billy, that says you made over $800,000 last year? Henderson and Sons Construction employs 12 people across 2 crews. We specialize in commercial foundations and residential construction throughout Monroe County. The next screen displayed property deeds for 4 different rental properties I owned complete, with their assessed values and current market rates. Uncle Robert stood up from his chair, studying the television screen intently. Hold on a minute. Billy, you're telling us you own multiple properties, but you drive that old pickup truck and you never talk about having money. Because real success isn't about impressing people or showing off wealth. It's about building something solid that provides security for your family and helps your community when possible. I clicked to a new folder labeled Evidence, and the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically from confusion to focused attention. Now I want to show everyone what Gloria has been doing while living in my house and accepting my below-market generosity. The first audio file played through the television speakers with crystal clarity. Gloria's unmistakable voice filled the room as she spoke to someone on the phone. This is Gloria Henderson calling about Henderson and Sons Construction. I'm Billy's aunt, and I felt obligated to warn you that he might not be the most reliable choice for large construction projects. Family members have noticed some concerning patterns in his decision-making and financial management that make us worry about his ability to complete major contracts successfully. The room erupted in shocked murmurs and uncomfortable shifting as relatives processed what they were hearing. "Gloria," my mother said sharply, "what exactly is that recording?" "That's Gloria calling my business clients to sabotage contracts and destroy my professional reputation," I replied calmly. "She cost me approximately $250,000 in lost revenue over the past 18 months. Gloria's face had gone completely white, but she tried to maintain her defensive position. I was trying to protect people from making potentially costly mistakes. I played the second recording, this one from Jake's soccer coach. "Hi, this is Coach Williams returning your call about the Henderson family. Someone claiming to be a relative contacted me suggesting that Billy Henderson might not be able to afford the tournament registration fees and asking whether our team had scholarship funds available for players from disadvantaged families." Emma and Jake looked up at me with confused expressions, not understanding why someone would tell people their daddy couldn't afford soccer expenses when he had just bought them new cleats and equipment the previous week. The next series of documents showed correspondence between Gloria and the elementary school, where she had enrolled my children in free meal programs and charity drives, while describing them as coming from a financially disadvantaged household. She convinced Emma and Jake's teachers that I couldn't provide basic necessities for my children. I explained, watching my family's expressions transform from confusion to horror. My kids have been eating charity lunches and carrying donated school supplies, while their classmates whispered about their family needing special assistance. Uncle Robert stood up abruptly from his chair, his face flushed with anger. "Gloria, what in God's name were you thinking?" But I still wasn't finished. I displayed bank statements revealing Gloria's actual financial situation 3 months behind on car payments, $15,000 in credit card debt, and documented loans from 5 different elderly relatives. She borrowed money from Aunt Margaret, telling her that Uncle Robert couldn't help. She borrowed from Uncle Robert, claiming that Aunt Margaret had refused. She told each of you that the others were unable to assist her, and that I had refused to support my own family, when the truth is that she was living in my house for half the going rental rate. Grandmother Henderson spoke for the first time, her voice shaky with age and emotion. "Billy, I need to ask you something about the changes I made to my will last spring." I pulled up the final set of documents, copies of my grandmother's original will, and the revised version that removed me as a beneficiary with Gloria's signature as a witness to the changes. She convinced our 87-year-old grandmother to disinherit me because I was supposedly too irresponsible to handle financial inheritance, while she was simultaneously living on my charity and sabotaging my business relationships. My grandmother began crying quietly, her small hands trembling as she covered her face. "Oh, Billy, I'm so sorry. She told me you were struggling with money and couldn't be trusted to make good decisions. I thought I was protecting the family assets." The room had turned completely against Gloria as the scope of her deception became undeniable. Uncle Robert walked over to where she was sitting and stood looking down at her with an expression of disgust. "Gloria, I want you to explain to me how you could justify any of this behavior." Gloria's carefully maintained composure finally cracked completely. She stood up from the recliner, her face flushed with embarrassment and fury. "Ben, because it's not fair." She screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. "Harold worked his entire life, built what we thought was a successful career, earned respect from his colleagues. And what did we have to show for it when he died? Nothing, absolutely nothing. Billy drops out of college, gets his hands dirty working construction, and somehow he ends up owning property and running a profitable business. Where's the justice in that?" "So you decided to destroy him," Uncle Robert said quietly. "I decided to tell the truth about what real success should look like," Gloria snapped back. "Success should be about education and professional respect, not getting dirty and building things with your hands." Cousin Jennifer shook her head in disbelief. "Gloria, you've been living in his house. He saved you from losing everything when Harold died." "I didn't know it was his house," Gloria protested desperately. "How was I supposed to know that someone like Billy could own property?" I closed the laptop and looked around the room at my family members, most of whom were staring at Gloria with expressions ranging from disappointment to outright anger. The truth is that Gloria has been living in my house and accepting my financial assistance while conducting a 3-year campaign to destroy my reputation, sabotage my business, and damage my relationship with my own children. She convinced Emma and Jake that their father was a failure while sitting in the living room of the house I purchased to keep her from becoming homeless. Uncle Robert walked back to where Gloria was standing. "Get your things and leave. You're not welcome at family gatherings until you figure out how to apologize for this mess and make some kind of amends." "Wow, where am I supposed to go?" Gloria asked desperately, the reality of her situation finally sinking in completely. "That's something you should have considered before you spent 3 years attacking the person who was keeping you off the streets," he replied firmly. One by one, family members stood up and walked toward the door, leaving Gloria isolated in the center of the room. Grandmother Henderson approached me with tears in her eyes. "Billy, can you ever forgive a foolish old woman for believing lies about her own grandson?" I hugged her gently. "There's nothing to forgive, Grandma. You trusted someone you thought you could believe." As the room emptied, Gloria remained standing beside my father's recliner, finally understanding that her years of manipulation and sabotage had destroyed not just my reputation, but her own place within the Henderson family. 2 weeks after the family confrontation that changed everything, my phone began ringing with opportunities I hadn't expected. Word had spread through Monroe County's tight-knit construction community about Gloria's systematic sabotage, and contractors who had heard suspicious rumors about Henderson and Sons construction now understood they had been deliberately misled by someone with personal motivations. Mike Stevens from Stevens Development called on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing blueprints for a residential complex. "Billy, I owe you a sincere apology. Someone claiming to be your concerned family member contacted me last year when you submitted your bid for our retail shopping center. They suggested you might have reliability issues that could affect project completion." I leaned back in my office chair, remembering the Stevens project as another contract that had mysteriously evaporated after promising initial meetings. "What specifically did they tell you, Mike?" "That you had been making questionable financial decisions, and that family members were worried about your ability to handle large-scale projects responsibly." Now I understand what really happened. I've got a new shopping complex project breaking ground next month that's perfect for your crew if you're interested. 3 more contractors called that same week with similar stories and new business opportunities. Jim Morrison from Morrison Development offered me the contract I had lost the previous year, plus 2 additional projects his company had planned for the following spring. My business calendar filled up faster than I could manage the workload. The elementary school situation resolved itself with equal efficiency. Principal Rodriguez requested a formal meeting to apologize for the misunderstanding about my family's financial status and to ensure that Emma and Jake were immediately removed from all assistance programs. We're implementing new protocols regarding family financial information, Mrs. Rodriguez explained as we sat in her office overlooking the playground where my children were enjoying recess with their friends. Only parents or legal guardians can make decisions about assistance programs, and we require documented proof of need, rather than relying on third-party recommendations. Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, pulled me aside after the meeting to share her observations about my daughter's recent transformation. Emma has been withdrawn and anxious for months, but I didn't understand why until now. She was embarrassed about being enrolled in programs for low-income families and thought it meant her family was struggling financially. That afternoon brought a complete reversal in my children's attitudes about school and their social relationships. Emma bounded through our front door with her backpack flying behind her and a smile that lit up our entire living room. "Daddy, I told everyone at lunch that you own houses and run a construction company," she announced proudly. "Madison's dad asked me for your phone number because he wants you to build them a new deck for their backyard." Jake wasn't far behind his sister, practically bouncing with excitement. "Coach Williams said he's sorry about the scholarship thing and he wants to know if you can help fix the dugout roof before next season starts." My mother called that evening with news about my grandmother's response to learning the truth about Gloria's manipulation. She spent all afternoon at her attorney's office tearing up that revised will and reinstating the original version that includes you as a beneficiary. She also wants to take Emma and Jake shopping this weekend for new school clothes. "Mom, they don't need anything. They were never actually disadvantaged or lacking basic necessities." "I know that perfectly well, son. But your grandmother feels terrible about doubting you based on lies, and she wants to spoil her great-grandchildren a little bit to make up for her mistake. Let her have this small gesture of apology." Gloria's court date arrived on a gray Thursday morning in November. She had attempted to fight the eviction through legal channels, claiming landlord harassment and discrimination based on family relationships. Judge Patricia Wells reviewed all the evidence methodically, including recordings of Gloria's calls to my business clients and documentation of her interference with my children's school situation. "Mrs. Henderson," Judge Wells said sternly from the bench, "not only do I find absolutely no evidence of harassment or discrimination, but the evidence clearly demonstrates that Mr. Henderson has been exceptionally generous as a landlord. Charging $800 monthly rent for a property worth $1,500 in the current market shows considerable kindness rather than cruelty." The judge ordered Gloria to pay restitution of $12,000 for deliberately interfering with my business relationships, a settlement that would help offset some of the contracts she had cost me through her sabotage campaign. Furthermore, Judge Wells continued, "I'm deeply troubled by the evidence of deliberate interference with Mr. Henderson's business operations and the emotional impact on his minor children. Your behavior as documented in these proceedings appears to demonstrate a pattern of manipulation and deceit that this court finds completely unacceptable." The local newspaper picked up the story, running a brief article titled, "Local Contractor Wins Harassment Lawsuit Against Former Tenant." The piece mentioned that the tenant had been systematically interfering with business relationships while living in property owned by the plaintiff, presenting the case as a cautionary tale about rental disputes and family conflicts. Moving day arrived with professional movers and a large U-Haul truck parked in the driveway of my property. I drove over to 6511 Maple Street to conduct a final inspection and ensure the transition proceeded smoothly without any additional drama. Gloria stood on the front porch, looking smaller and older than I remembered from our previous encounters. Her usual confidence and theatrical dignity had been replaced by something that resembled genuine remorse, mixed with profound embarrassment. "Billy," she said quietly, as I approached the front steps. "Could I please have a word with you before I leave permanently?" I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, maintaining some physical distance between us while remaining close enough for normal conversation. "I know you have every right to hate me for what I've done," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "What I did to you and your family was wrong. Not just wrong, but cruel and stupid and completely unjustifiable." Tears ran down her cheeks, and for the first time in years, they appeared genuine, rather than performed, for maximum emotional impact. When Harold died, and I discovered we had lost everything, I felt like such a complete failure. Here I had been talking for years about his business success and our comfortable lifestyle, and suddenly I realized it had all been an illusion. When I found out you were actually doing well, financially owning property, and running a successful business, it made me feel even worse about my own situation. She wiped her nose with a tissue, struggling to maintain composure, while admitting truths she had never spoken aloud. "I convinced myself that your success wasn't real success because you worked with your hands, instead of sitting behind a desk wearing business suits. I needed to believe that to make myself feel better about failing so completely at everything that mattered." I listened without interrupting, watching her wrestle with emotions and realization she had kept buried under years of defensive behavior and manufactured superiority. But the worst part, the thing I'll never be able to forgive myself for, is that I hurt Emma and Jake. I hurt innocent children because I was jealous and angry about my own failures. There's no excuse for that. Absolutely no excuse. She pulled an envelope from her purse, holding it out toward me with trembling hands. "This is a letter apologizing to Emma and Jake for the horrible things I said about you. I know it doesn't fix anything or undo the damage, but I wanted them to understand that what I told them about their father was completely wrong. You're a good father and a successful man, and they should be proud of you." I accepted the envelope but didn't open it while she was watching. "Gloria, I want you to understand something important. I didn't evict you because I wanted revenge or because I enjoyed watching you suffer. I evicted you because you crossed a line when you hurt my children. You made Emma and Jake ashamed of their father while sitting in the house I bought to help you avoid homelessness. That was unforgivable." She nodded, fresh tears flowing as she acknowledged the truth of my words. "I know, and I'm going to spend a very long time trying to figure out how to live with what I've done to people who didn't deserve it." Despite everything she had put my family through, I found myself helping her carry boxes to the moving truck. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it wasn't cruelty either. It was simply the right thing to do, consistent with the values I wanted to model for my children. "Gloria, I'm going to give you the contact information for a financial counselor who specializes in helping people rebuild after major setbacks. No judgment, just practical assistance with budgeting and planning for the future." She looked genuinely surprised by the gesture. "After everything I did to you and your family, you're still trying to help me?" "I'm not doing this for you specifically. I'm doing it because helping people is who I am. Success isn't about tearing others down, even people who tried to tear you down first." 6 months later, Henderson and Sons Construction had expanded operations into 3 counties throughout Western New York. I hired 4 additional workers and purchased 2 new trucks to handle the increased workload. The business had grown beyond my original projections, driven by referrals from satisfied clients and the solid reputation I had built over 15 years of honest work and reliable service. I converted 6511 Maple Street into my business headquarters, with modern offices downstairs and comfortable apartments upstairs for my crew supervisors. The renovation symbolized everything I had learned about building something meaningful and permanent, rather than just impressive and showy. Emma and Jake's confidence returned stronger than it had been before Gloria's attacks. Emma wrote a school essay titled "My Hero Dad" that won the district-wide creative writing contest. In her essay, she described learning that real success meant working hard, helping people in your community, and never giving up on your dreams. even when others don't understand or appreciate them. Jake joined the school's annual Career Day Planning Committee and specifically requested that I come speak to students about construction and building trades. 20 kids gathered around my truck in the school parking lot as I demonstrated surveying equipment and explained how buildings progress from architectural blueprints to finished reality. "Your dad is so cool," one of Jake's classmates told him afterward. "I want to learn how to build houses when I grow up." The most meaningful moment came on a Saturday evening in late spring. I was tucking Emma and Jake into bed after a day spent fishing at the lake, when Emma asked me to tell them a bedtime story. "What kind of story would you like to hear tonight, sweetheart?" "Tell us about when you were secretly successful, but nobody in our family knew it except us," she said with a giggle. "Yeah," Jake chimed in enthusiastically. "Tell us about the day Aunt Gloria found out that her house was really your house the whole time. That's my favorite story." As I told them about the day their aunt learned that success comes in many different forms, and that quiet achievement often matters more than loud accomplishment, I realized that Gloria's toxic behavior had actually taught me something valuable about the difference between genuine confidence and defensive insecurity. The difference between building people up and tearing them down. The difference between real accomplishment and the mere performance of success. Most importantly, I learned that true success isn't measured by impressing others or accumulating symbols of status and wealth. It's measured by the security and stability you provide for your family, the respect you earn through honest work and fair dealing, and the legacy you build by treating people with dignity even when they don't return that courtesy. The real victory wasn't evicting Gloria or exposing her years of lies and manipulation. The real victory was Emma and Jake learning that their father was someone they could be genuinely proud of, someone who had built something meaningful while maintaining his integrity and values under pressure. Success, I came to understand, is quiet and steady rather than loud and demanding. It doesn't need to announce itself or diminish others to validate its own worth. It simply builds one solid foundation at a time, creating something that will endure long after the critics and doubters have moved on to other targets. That night, as I listened to Emma and Jake's peaceful breathing and thought about the house we lived in, the business I had created, and the family relationships I had rebuilt, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with proving anything to anyone else. The satisfaction came from knowing that I had built something meaningful with my own hands and my own determination, while never losing sight of what truly mattered: the love and respect of my children, the stability of my family, and the knowledge that success earned through honest work and genuine character will always outlast success built on manipulation and pretense. And that realization, more than any property deed or business contract, represented the kind of wealth that could never be taken away by jealous relatives or changing circumstances. Have you ever dealt with a family member who undermined your achievements or made you question your own worth? How did you handle the situation, and what did it teach you about the difference between genuine success and the appearance of success? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help others find it, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building real success, and share it with someone who might need to hear that quiet determination often achieves more than loud self-promotion. Thank you for listening to this journey, and remember that your true worth is determined not by others' opinions, but by the love, integrity, and perseverance you bring to everything you build in life.